world of work is changing rapidly, and in this podcast, we're examining the challenges and possibilities emerging within this change. We're talking about everything from labor market information to how to enable the thinking and doing that leads to better workforce development and employment outcomes. This is the Workforce Collective Podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Workforce Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Meeks, content creator and marketing assistant for Workforce Collective, and today our guest is joining us by phone, and she's the brilliant Rachel Crane, learning and engagement lead for Workforce Collective. We're talking design labs, the recent Ontario tour, and the importance of our recent focus, ELCC. So thanks as always for being here, Rachel.
Oh, thanks. You make me feel like a rock star, Caleb, like I'm in a band going on tour.
Oh, stop. All right, let's get started. So you recently went on an Ontario tour hosting design labs or workshop style conversations with people in economic development, employers, and children's services. And we saw people posting and engaging all over social media. So can you tell us what was the buzz all about? Like what exactly happened on this tour?
So we were hosting design thinking sessions, or what we call design labs, for a very, very special project that's near and dear to my heart. It is seeking to build new relationships and find new allies with people outside of the children's services and early learning and childcare world in order to make it a bigger movement. So in light of these widespread early learning and childcare workforce challenges, leaders from 6 different communities across Ontario have come together to advance 3 special strategic priorities and projects. So my tour took me to Brockville up in Eastern Ontario, to Sudbury up in Northern Ontario, Chatham-Kent, Western Ontario, and Barrie, so the county of Simcoe. We also held one several months back in our home area here at Niagara. Oh, and your other question was what happened in those rooms. So lots of friendships and connections, a deepening of relationships. So we could ask people to come to a social event. We could have done that, but this way we had systems thinking activities, systems mapping, people getting to know where people sit in the system. And so if someone's in economic development or someone's a politician, someone's managing a childcare operation, that was all known right up front. And then they said from their perspectives, what issues and challenges they're seeing in terms of what's happening in early learning and childcare right now.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot went on. So what were some of the solutions that came from this design lab?
Oh, there was lots. Because of the new networks and relationships that were being created, lots of new insights, and we heard just new ideas. We were brainstorming a lot of different solutions. And we also heard about challenges and gained deeper awareness into the issues, I would say. So with that all said, there was all kinds of ideas across these 4 events in June that I was at. And people were wanting to get different levels of government to look at the Canada-wide early learning and childcare policy. It's a great new policy that's really amplifying that we need quality early learning and childcare to be more accessible. So that's the $10 a day plan that will help a lot of parents and families. The key issue, though, is that the workforce is in crisis. So we don't have early learning and childcare workers, early childhood educators to meet the demand that policy brings. So one of the insights that were amplified, where we have physical buildings in these communities that have spaces for childcare, but we don't have the workers to staff them. So on average, there's like a 50% occupancy rate right now. And there are already thousands of children on the wait list. It varies in different communities. And the government's new plan is to have even more children and families to access, but they just cannot because we can't even fill the current demand. So that was one of the big, I'd say, themes, was to get a new campaign going to help build that awareness. You know, how do I get my MPs to be informed? How do I get regional councillors, mayors, people in economic development? How do we get these people in positions of power and these change agents to really be aware of that issue, the workforce issue being one, in order to help shift the priority away from the policy right now really wants to build new spaces, new buildings. How do we shift it to say, how do we fill the ones we've got and really take care of the workforce? So paying them more starts with wages, because right now their average salary is like $20 an hour. It varies from different communities, but the common theme here is that it's not enough. Like these ECEs, early childhood educators, are not making a sustainable living wage for the value that they're bringing into the economy and into the work. So we need to value them and compensate them higher, more fairly. So that was another whole conversation was around how might we support talent attraction and retention, specifically around early childhood educators. How can we get more of them working in the field and staying in the field? And so that was about how do we increase wages? So another idea that I thought was really brilliant was someone in economic development said, well, we have levies for parks and recreation. So if a new development comes in, we can tax that developer and those new homes to contribute to this fund to have better parks and rec. What about having the same kind of levy and all that money that's pooled, kind of like crowdsourced funding, pooled to contribute to wages for especially municipally run childcare operations? So I thought there's all kinds of really cool ideas, but those are the two main ones that I would say ideas like that really came up and emerged.
Yeah, it's great to have a varying group of people, because when you're trying to approach situations like this, different people have different perspectives on it. And they're not easy issues to tackle, especially not alone. So that's good that we gather people like that and get a whole range of perspectives. I know me myself, I have a friend that went to school to be an ELC, and she didn't end up doing it. Once she went to go like look for work, she's like, this is too little pay for what I'm going to have to do, which is a shame, because that's really like, you go to school because that's what you want to do, right?
Oh, yeah. And people who enter in the field are so passionate, right? They're passionate about educating tiny humans and supporting their social and emotional development, like setting them up for success in their future life, which adds a whole lot of economic benefit, right? So it's a passion kind of career. And unfortunately, passion alone can't sustain it because people need to put food on the table. They have families to take care of. I have friends who have multiple jobs if they're an ECE, like they have two or three jobs just to make ends meet, and they themselves have little kids. So who's taking care of their kids while they're out working so much? Like it's not sustainable, and it adds a lot of stress. So the story that you just shared about your friend is unfortunately a very common one. And we also have the data. We have various 2-page briefs to highlight data like that for each of the communities now, and anyone can find them on our website. One of them, the key points, is about graduate and student retention rates in the ECE programs. And we had a lot of educators and college associate deans in the design lab rooms on that tour with us who were trying to think of, okay, what can we do when they're in training program, when they're in school for this, to support from that angle too, and all kinds of ideas and all kinds of complex challenges to solve. And it's going to take a movement, which is what we're building here. And like you said, diverse perspectives can't just operate in a silo or alone. We really need to come together with others, see how we can solve it together.
Exactly. So then what next? What happens with these solutions that emerged? What happens now that the design lab's over?
So we looked at that as a beginning of sorts. We did have those series of events in June, and now we're into the next month, July here, and we've created fact sheets. So that's something that people in the design labs identified too. Like, what if we just have 3 to 5 key points that you need the general public to know, so people are inundated with information, especially about crises and the fires we need to put out. So if there's just 3 to 5 things you want them to know. So we have those that are going to be circulating any day now, and hopefully just getting more awareness built. And we have an amazing video from some people with the especially economic development perspective are sharing on that video to talk about, again, from their perspective. It's just like well, Caleb, you helped produce that one. What is it, like 2 to 3 minutes long?
With the 3 speakers, that's about like 2.5, actually.
Yeah, so we wanted that digestible content, again, hitting on that idea to create a campaign. We also have, longer videos that people can watch too to get more information. But we wanted those digestible, bite-sized informations to be out there, the points to be out there, casting a really wide net. And then we have different events that are upcoming, one of which is really exciting. It's our Growing Your Workforce conference that's happening in the fall, hosted by Workforce Collective and Workforce Planning West. So we're getting workforce development and planning folks and economic development folks there in the room, and hosting another design lab to bring together all the other design labs to really create a roadmap to go forward. And again, spreading awareness and keep that net a casting. And there's more work that's happening with it's called the Better Together project, which I mentioned before. They're looking into new models for how can they support ECE benefits and pension and other kind of shared services to help retain the talent that we do have. And in general, talking about innovative messaging for how the ECE profession is valuable and how critical it is for that quality education and childcare for children who are age 0 to 6. So just, again, more awareness in a different way. And there's activity in the actual local communities happening too. So one of the economic developers, one of the communities was like, we need to get together all the other economic developers who aren't in the room today and talk about how do we get this on a strategic level. So maybe it's in their economic development plan. Niagara's, I know, just speaking from being in the community and close to economic development here, it is referenced in our 10-year economic plan that we need to figure out a better model and support for our early learning childcare system, or else we don't have an economy. Like, we can't sustain our workforce if people don't have that support and go that way to go to work.
So can I ask, of all the solutions that emerge, everything discussed, how do you narrow in? How do you decide what you move forward with?
Well, in your question there, I heard you, like the word you. First of all, I'd say it's not me. So I don't decide. And true to a facilitator, I'm gonna fly in, get the conversation going, get the information out there, support and nurture the relationships to be built, and then kind of watch where that goes. So you asked what are the solutions that emerged, and I love that word emerged. It is very emergent. The truth is, I don't know where it'll go. I don't know where each of the communities are going to take it. I have some ideas and I can help to support where I can, but I can't say that I would narrow it on any one kind of activity or solution. To me, they're all valuable. They all have a lot of potential to help move the dial and solve this workforce crisis. So I'd like them all to happen, but doing what we can, right, with our workforce collective team, what's within our power right now to reasonably move on, and keeping in mind the capacity. So we don't want to burn out ourselves. We ourselves are a nonprofit organization where in other nonprofit sector work burnout is high. So we can't expect too much of ourselves. That's why we really need to come together with others and collaborate and share the load here. It's also summer, so there's capacity. People, my kids are off school and I'm facing some childcare issues. Childcare is tight. So just personally experiencing that, and ever grateful for the ECEs that educate my kids throughout the year. So just being really mindful and discerning over what we can reasonably take on and know that it's going to be step by step. We're going to move the dial.
That's great. That reminds me, I hear people say, what we can't do alone, we could surely do together.
Put that on a bumper sticker. That's a good one.
I'm sure it is too, somewhere. So why is this topic of such importance? Like, why is there so much focus on ELCC in our work recently?
Really good question. We arrived to this, we zoomed in on this kind of one, I'm not going to say segment of the workforce, because we had a wider, broader women in work portfolio that we had looked into. We were exploring all the issues that women in work face. And obviously women make up half, if not more, of the population and workforce. And so they're a really important demographic for us to think about what unique needs women have when it comes to being able to work. And one of those things is childcare. So the truth is, care for the family still largely defaults onto women. So we need to figure out how to provide child support and family support for women so they aren't able to work. So that's a big one. Aside from that, early learning and childcare has huge economic impact. So that's highlighted in the briefs, in every brief, just how valuable these ECEs and the workers are actually working, earning income, contributing. They're spending money, contributing to the economy that way as well. And again, enabling women and other working parents to go to work. And they're educating, probably most importantly, the next generation, which is a very precious economic resource, as Armine Yalnizyan says in one of our videos, and a pretty renowned economist also. I really like how she says that. It's just, you don't want to think about humans or kids as an economic resource, but we almost do sometimes need to in order to get the system's attention, because we have no problem talking about how much money we need to pour into building roads and other kind of buildings and different hard infrastructure like that. So maybe if we start talking it in terms of that soft infrastructure, which is humans and people, we might get the conversation to another level.
Yeah, well, speaking of like economic resources, if you think about it in terms of GDP, childcare benefits three areas of that. One, being the child, because the quality of childcare and quality education will lead into more higher quality work. And there's also the increase from parents being able to work, like mothers being able to work, and educators themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then beyond that, like, we know that all of these factors are interconnected, and the social well-being, right, of people and individual health is important, and it has a direct impact on the rest of our economy. So another friend in the video who shared is Dr. Amit Zafari, and She's taught me a lot about quality childcare actually impacts rates of crime for juvenile crime, so maybe adolescent. So if people are early on, they have that support in the early years, they're less likely to commit crimes. So again, what is the
Wow.
impact economically of that, right? Also mental health support. Those who are cultivated those early formative years, when their brains are in this rapid development and attachment is really important, if they can form those attachment bonds to a caregiver earlier on and have that stability, that helps with trauma resilience and also mental hygiene and health later on in life. So all kinds of reasons why we really need to look at early learning and childcare as a solution to so many of our social problems. And so that's why I get really fired up about this project, as you can probably tell, and super excited about the movement. There's a lot of other people across Ontario that are coming together. So I think it's just a matter of time and moving enough people to behavior change and action before we start to really see change in the workforce sustainability. I think that it's just a matter of time and it's going to happen.
So you might even hear some people say, like, why should I care if I don't have a child? Why is addressing the issue within ELCC important for everybody?
I would say if you don't have children or grandchildren that you're seeing this issue, because it really is like every parent or grandparent that I know has some kind of story about their child is on a wait list for childcare. They just don't have it, or, mom had to stay home from work in order to take care of kids and it's just not good for the family. So many countless stories like that right now. So if you don't have a friend or your own child and young child in your family right now to drive you to start to care and pay attention, it's certainly, again, the economic impact I would just stress. And that is why we had it on the first page of our 2-page brief. We really emphasized that this has economic value. So, for example, when our government in 2014 introduced full-day kindergarten, that was a public policy decision. And those kindergarten teachers are paid on average like $43, $45 an hour. So they're not sparing expenses. They're actually compensating fairly. And that system is working really well. And it's proven return on investment. So there's 90% of Ontario's 4 and 5-year-olds right now are in full-day kindergarten in public schools. And that means you see all the return from parents going back to work and et cetera, like we've been talking about. So all of the interventions, I'd say, with this public policy in Quebec or Ontario, or whether it's full across Canada, we've seen about that universal childcare, taking care of the ELCC workers more, it's always proven to return on investment. So it's win-win. It's really no one's losing out here when we decide to invest in early learning and childcare. And I really want to trust that most people can get behind that and most people are going to care about that, because if our economy is doing good, our small businesses are doing well, our local neighborhoods are doing well financially, and we're more prosperous and we have more prosperous communities, more vibrant communities, less crime, more beautiful places to live and work in. Who doesn't want that, right? So for me, it's a no-brainer, but I do understand people don't necessarily connect that and take that systems thinking approach to this issue.
Yeah, because our communities and our economy, that's everyone's communities and everyone's economy. So it has to start from somewhere. And it seems like we're trying to push for a little bit of a shift in thinking. And I think that's great. But we've run out of time again. But I think this was a great conversation. And I hope that everyone that's listening learned as much as I did.
Thanks for hosting this one, Caleb. I'm excited, again, to help spread the reach and get more people involved through this podcast.
Oh, me too. And thank you for being here and giving us insight on that cool recent tour you did.
Welcome. Rock on.
And thank you, everyone listening. If you want to learn more about our work surrounding ELCC, visit our website at workforcecollective.ca and check out the Caring Economy section under our Projects tab. And we invite you to follow us along our journey as we tackle and address more foundational issues in our workforce. You can follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, or subscribe to our monthly newsletter. And stay tuned for more episodes of the Workforce Collective podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or just say, Alexa, play the Workforce Collective podcast. Thank you all for being here.